I think when you see that, it's almost a bit like looking behind the curtain of The Wizard of Oz. You know, there's some lovely stuff going on, but it's not magic.
No. As far as Liverpool are concerned, they're the team that's keeping the heat on Manchester City. They continued their unbeaten run with a 3-0 win away at Watford. It had characteristics of, I suppose, a new side to Liverpool that we're seeing regularly this season. They were held to a goalless stalemate after 45 minutes and came into their own. They even scored a third goal on the counter-attack when they were down 10 men, which goes to show how potent they can be. They hit them on the counter. Football 365 said we're seeing a more mature Liverpool, a team that doesn't need to attack all out, but can pick and choose wisely because they're confident their defence will hold firm. Now, this is interesting. Alan Smith in The Times weighs up the domestic campaign at Anfield with what's going on in Europe. He says more than a third of the way into the season, appraising Liverpool remains far from straightforward. There are clear signs of progress, and that's obvious because they're more points now after 13 league games than in any of their previous Premier League seasons. But yet, defeat away to PSG on Wednesday will leave them on the brink of exiting the Champions League at the first hurdle, having made, of course, the final last season. So while the joyous and expressive attacking play of that campaign has been sacrificed for something more taut and restrained. So what happens if they do go out of the Champions League? Will they look back at this as a better season than last?
I think it's the best thing that could happen to them if they want to win the Premier League, for sure. You know, Jurgen Klopp's history suggests that he only usually does well in a domestic league or in continental competition. Very difficult to do both at the same time. When Manchester City are playing at the level that they're playing at, you have to think that Liverpool are going to be out of the Champions League if they are to really take City the whole way. And if City were to go deep in the Champions League, that might be the biggest thing we could have, the closest thing we could have to an equaliser between these two teams.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Yeah, I think, however, he doesn't want to be in the Europa League.
No.
But I do think they've got more resources at their disposal now than they have had in the past. You know, Henderson's been unavailable in that midfield, but, you know, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain's been out. He didn't play Fabinho for most of the season. And, you know, Wijnaldum stepped up. Milner's evergreen. So, you know, he does have great resources in midfield, which is the most important area to have them in. You know, when he's got that front three, he can pick from anyone while leaving Sturridge on the bench. You know, that's a hell of an asset. And that defence that he's got there now with Joe Gomez and Virgil van Dijk, well, neither of them were anywhere near that first team 18 months ago because they weren't either at the club or in the senior squad virtually. So, you know, this is, and Alisson as well, you know. So I think that there's an awful lot of strengthening that's happened at Liverpool. And this is a side that has had some reasonably credible seasons in the past 5 or 6 years. Many of those players still are at the club. So, you know, while others have improved, and Manchester City constantly do, and there's room for improvement everywhere else, I think these are the most improved side in terms of not just the first 11, but the full 25.
Yeah. There's a sense of evolution already there, isn't there, at Anfield under Jurgen Klopp? I mentioned the word maturity. I mean, patient is the one that's been used in that piece just over our shoulder. What's happened to the heavy metal football that Jurgen Klopp talked about when he first arrived? Is that subsiding slowly?
He's added some base metals, hasn't he, in Alisson and Van Dijk. So
there's an element of the rock and roll football. He needed to play that to disrupt the status quo of, you know, when he was at Dortmund, and he did that with Bayern. And then he'd come over here, and at the start it was like bang, crash, wallop, and all that. But they're actually in a better position if they bring in, and what they have done is forensically bring in players to address weaknesses. Now, centre-back was a huge weakness for them.
They went straight for it.
They've got Virgil van Dijk, and he might be the best centre-back in the world at the moment. He's certainly in the top 3 for me. Alisson they've brought in to fix the issues they had in goal, which obviously came to a head in the Champions League final last year. Joe Gomez, I think, has been a revelation. You know, maybe they weren't expecting him to be this good, but they've now got a first-choice centre-back to play alongside Van Dijk.
Yeah.
So added to that depth in midfield, you know, and you forget that they sold Coutinho, they sold their best player not even that long ago, but they've reinvested that money well and methodically.
Just look at that, and you can see it in, you know, stark reality in terms of the goals conceded over the last 6 seasons. But can they keep that going, Matt, and play the kind of football that we saw at its height maybe last season?
No, and we've seen that. You know, they're not.
But we can see City do something similar.
I think City beat teams in the tunnel. I think that a lot of teams come to play Manchester City to roll over, to have an exercise in damage limitation. I don't think you see that for Liverpool. So I think that's an intrinsic advantage to being Manchester City, to being the champions, to being the anointed champions, to being Pep Guardiola's team. I think that other sides think they've always got a chance against Liverpool because of those prior statistics. You know, they were conceding more than a goal a game over every single season prior to this one. You know, I don't think that will stay that way for the rest of this season. You know, if Salah hits his straps, you know, if we see Mane start banging in hat tricks, if Firmino weighs in with goals, which he finally did this weekend, then I think teams will be warier than they have been so far. But we haven't seen that yet.
What we're talking about is a fear factor, essentially. Yeah. And at the end of last season, when they were flying and Salah was scoring and unstoppable, they really had a fear factor because every team playing against them just felt like they were going to get sliced by these counter-attacks at ferocious speed with Mane and Firmino and Salah. Manchester City have a huge fear factor because we've seen what they did over a whole year and it was fundamentally very impressive. For Liverpool, we only saw it a few months at the back end of last season, so they've got more to prove. You have to earn that. They haven't quite earned that yet, but they're quite clearly, I'd say, the second best team in the Premier League. I don't think many people would doubt that right now. And there are a set of circumstances where they can run Manchester City close, but as I say, it probably needs them to go out of the Champions League, which is not something I guess that they're willing to accept at the moment.
Okay, gents, for now, thanks very much. Well, 14 points off the top of the table. Manchester City are their rivals United. And up next, we'll be focusing on more disappointment that Jose Mourinho's men once again failed to find their scoring touch. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.